Hello and welcome to Updog Sports Talk. If you are finding us here for the first time here at Updog Sports Talk, we deliver honest, fan focused coverage that spotlights the teams, the players, and communities that are often overlooked by mainstream sports media. We do this because your team has a story worth telling. Today, in that nature, we are going to be looking at the Patriot League. This conference is one that has made very smart realignment moves recently, and in general, they've gotten rid of scholarship restrictions and everything. And this conference is becoming a serious player at the FCS level. I mean, the additions of Richmond, William and Mary, and Villanova are all teams that are very much towards the top of FCS very consistently. So you've got some proud programs coming in, and really, this is a conference that's going to continue to improve. There's some teams that have been in this conference that are very much ready to show the newcomers they're not going to just roll in and win. So this is going to be an exciting race, and now we'll kind of dive in a little bit. This preview will be going team by team through each of the Patriot League teams, so everyone gets their time to shine. We'll be looking at what is the biggest reason to be excited about that team, what are some potential concerns, and then what does success look like in 2026. So tune in, relax, and enjoy the show. We'll be starting with the Bucknell Bison. This is a team that has a pretty good offensive players. Like Sam Milligan is one of the best receivers in FCS football. And they also have TJ Caden right next to him as well. I mean, this is an elite group of receivers that makes Bucknell football like well worth the price of admission. It's definitely one of the best receiver tandems that you can find in this conference. So that alone is a reason to be excited. But there is a bit of an uphill climb a little bit for Bucknell. You know, their defense really just kind of bottomed out last year. They gave up more than 442 yards per game, which is just an astounding number. That is a lot. And their offensive line allowed 42 sacks, so they must protect the quarterback better as well, especially if you're going to be in these offensive shootouts. So that's going to be the huge thing there. And so for Bucknell, like, this is a program that really has seen some positive momentum. You know, 2 years ago, they were right there in the conference title race. And certainly my hope is that hopefully that missed opportunity is not going to be their only one in this modern age, but that was very tough to fall short of that. But I think you could feel hopeful that this program can compete here in the future if they can finish with right around that 500 level. They can finish 6-6, even 5-7. That would feel pretty encouraging for this team. And of course, just in general, like let's see the offensive line protect the quarterback better. You know, allow them to get the ball to these receivers, and that at least makes this team a lot of fun. But in terms of future hopes, got to see the defense improve a little bit as well. Next, we go to the Colgate Raiders. This team is going to be another one that really produces an offense. This group has a quarterback in Jake Sterney who's back, and they're really good up there, and really in general, like I think the offense averaged over 31 points a game, I think, but so they're going to be explosive on that side of the ball. They're going to give teams a tough time and really give them a run for their money. But of course, the big challenge for Colgate is in order to get past the point where they're just hovering around 500, where they can make their way further up in the conference, they're going to need to play better defense. Their defense last year gave up over 400 yards, over 30 points per game. So they must get better on defense in order to climb forward in this conference. So success for them kind of looks like, I think they finished below, you know, they finished 5-7 last year. That was year one under new staff. So I think this year you're looking to finish, I would say let's go with 7-5. I think 7-5 would look really good for Colgate, would get them above the 500 level. And at that point, they feel like, okay, we're getting close to competing for a spot in the playoffs at this point. You know, just a few more moves and we can get there. So I think that would be the most encouraging for Colgate is to be able to do that. Now we go to the Fordham Rams. This is a team that they have talent, and a lot of guys are back. They have Gunnar Smith, a quarterback. He does need to cut back in the turnovers a little bit, but of course, we'll get to why turnovers are a problem in the first place. But he is a very promising player, and really, this is a program that has been able to bring in and develop talent, but putting it on the field and actually winning games again has proven to be a challenge. I think one of the biggest issues is an offensive line that is just struggling immensely. They have not been able to allow the run game to take off. They gave up an astounding 47 sacks last year. That must improve. So those are two areas there. And of course, I mentioned Gunnar Smith's turnovers. Well, I can understand why the quarterback's turning the ball over when he's getting hit this quickly and the run game isn't able to help him. That's a lot of pressure to put on a quarterback. So really, this unit up front is going to be the big area that kind of decides things a little bit for the Rams. But in terms of what success looks like, I mean, this is a team coming off a 1-win season. So I think getting back to 4 wins, maybe even 5, I think that would be very encouraging. And really, just let's get Gunnar Smith hit a little bit less, please. They need to get a little bit better about protecting him. So that is what I would like to see there. But for Georgetown, that's the next team in the list here. The Hoyas kind of are working their way through everything. Georgetown has a pretty good, they have a good secondary on this team. Chris Martin and Braylon Wise are good pair of corners. So you got some really promising pieces to develop around on the defensive side of the ball. But of course, the issue is they need to get better on offense. They have to be able to put up more points. And really, overall, can they figure out, solidify the quarterback position? Can the offensive line protect that quarterback? I mentioned before with the previous team, Fordham, that they had a hard time protecting the quarterback. Georgetown had just about the same issue. They gave up 46 sacks last year. So that is going to be a big challenge for them. And Georgetown has remained pretty competitive in this conference, impressively, because they are a non-scholarship program that is competing in a conference that is continuing to invest to compete. So it's going to be an uphill climb for Georgetown any year. And right now they're probably trying to focus on getting more competitive on the basketball side. But for Georgetown, I would say success looks like just kind of being in the race, being competitive, and winning. Getting near the 500 level would be really good for them. So I think that could show some pretty good success. And they've been good at finishing around that level recently. So we'll see if they can continue to maintain at least being solid. Now we look at Holy Cross, the Crusaders. Holy Cross was really good at the FCS level just a few years ago, but they've kind of struggled to find their way ever since Bob Chesney left for JMU. So now they're kind of trying to find their way back a little bit. But I think you got a defense that can kind of they can hold up pretty well, and the offense at least has a lot back. I think it really helps to, because the last few years it really feels like their offense kind of keeps getting rated a little bit. This year that is not the case, but we need to see the offense kind of take a step forward with that continuity. They struggle to put up points, barely hit 20 points per game, and the offensive line gave up 32 sacks last year. So we need to see those areas improve a little bit for Holy Cross to take a step forward. I think for them, the goal is to finish right around 500, maybe even 7-5, to get back to competing towards the top of this conference. Because we've seen a step back in recent years, but we know this is a program that can compete with the best in the Patriot League. So they need to get back to that. We go to the Lafayette Leopards. Lafayette is a team that has a pretty loaded receiver room. They have Carson Persing, Mason Cooner back. So they have some really good pieces in that receiver room. The offense overall is really really solid, and you've got a lot back on defense. There are a lot of contributors all around the defensive side of the ball. So can they take a step forward is going to be the big question there, because last year what really kept Lafayette back was the fact that they gave up, nearly 30 points a game and almost 400 yards per game. So they need to be able to get some more stops, especially with losing your quarterback. Edwards is gone now. So they need to be able to figure it out. But for Lafayette, like, I think success, they hang around the top 25 a lot. So success looks like getting to that at large bid in the FCS playoffs. I think the way the strength of the Patriot League is looking, I think it's possible at 8-4, kind of depending on what they do in the non-conference. Actually, I think in particular their schedule probably sets them up where 8-4 would get them in. But I would like that. That's what they need to see this year. Now we go to their rivals, the Lehigh Mountain Hawks. Lafayette and Lehigh is the oldest rivalry in college football. No one has played more games against each other than these two programs. So it's a great transition there. Lehigh is a team that is pretty loaded. Like they have this is one of the programs that's done a really good job recently and has become a major player at the FCS level. They have a star quarterback in Hayden Johnson, who's really good. Luke Yoder is one of the best running backs in FCS football, easily a top 5 back. Like he could be a guy who ends up putting up big numbers this year. And they have a veteran offensive line in front of them to make sure this offense really keeps going. Ultimately, one of the biggest questions is going to be like, how do you replace your coach, Kevin Cahill? He really built this program up. And I think one of the biggest things you see in the Patriot League sometimes is like you see a program take off. I just mentioned this with Holy Cross a few teams ago, where they're having a really good run. They're right towards the top of the FCS level. And then that excellent coach that built them up leaves, and you instantly see them fade back. I think if you want to go even further back, Fordham kind of was in the same boat when Joe Moorhead left. Like, so you just see these teams not be able to maintain that success. So Lehigh is now the team that's facing that test. Their coach, Rich Nagy, has the challenge of keeping this going. It helps to have the personnel back that they do, but he's got to keep this going a little bit for Lehigh. So expectations, I mean, this is a program that probably wants to make a statement, show these new teams that we're about to get to in a moment that they still run things here. So winning the Patriot League, I would say making the quarterfinals this year of the FCS playoffs would be really great, and show that this program's not going anywhere. In fact, they're going to remain at the top of the Patriot League and a major player at the FCS level for years to come. So I think that would be a huge statement if they could get that done. Now, I mean, it's kind of funny because I could just go through these teams in alphabetical order, but it's very funny that we end up with the newcomers here as the last 3. The Richmond Spiders were actually a newcomer last year. I think a lot of people thought they could just enter this conference and immediately dominate. That did not happen. They didn't even make the playoffs last year. That being said, Richmond does have a lot of contributors back. There's a lot to love about, continuity in the secondary. This defense is one of the top defenses in the conference in general, especially with the defensive line that stops the run, relentlessly pressures opposing quarterbacks. This is a really, really good unit here. But the biggest question for Richmond is going to be, can they find that offensive consistency? Ashton Snellshire is back at quarterback. He only completed 52% of his passes last year. We need to see that number improve a little bit. Richmond in general struggled to score. Their offense is going to need to pick it up if they're going to be a serious contender in this league. And I think for Richmond, like, this is a proud program. So in terms of expectations, this is a team that wants to reach the FCS playoffs. It feels like it's been oddly long since they've last been here. So let's see the Spiders get back to the playoffs this year. That is going to be what their goal is. Now we go to the Villanova Wildcats. So Villanova is they're an instant top program in this conference. Like Villanova is one of the most solid, steady programs at the FCS level. So getting them added to the Patriot League just adds instant credibility to the conference and really just gives everyone at large key opportunities to pull a big win that gets them in at large. But beating them is a little bit easier said than done, especially with a really good run game on the offensive side of the ball. Mace at running back is a star player, and their defense is going to be really, really good again. Capri Martin and Omari Bursey. Did I butcher that? I probably did. But those two are going to be key pieces of this defense. And Mark Ferrante is an excellent coach. He's not going to let Villanova go anywhere. But I think the biggest concern is just kind of, we would, for the most part, FCS has managed to stay away from all this nonsense that we've seen during this offseason, all the court cases, the player being eligible, ineligible, all that. But unfortunately for Villanova, they have seen the impact of this with quarterback Pat McQuaid, who, he's been ruled eligible and ineligible like 7 different times in like the last 3 weeks, it feels like. I'm probably exaggerating that number a little bit, but if I am exaggerating, it's probably not by much. It's the Michael Scott snip snap meme has been what's going on with Pat McQuaid here. I think really that is going to be the one big concern for Villanova, is because, it's one thing to go to a new young quarterback, but if you're doing that at the beginning of the offseason with him for sure being the guy, I think you're in a better spot. But I really think this constant, he's eligible, he's not eligible, he's eligible, he's not eligible, I think all of that kind of can mess with the flow of the offense. So I'm very curious to see when they take the field in week 0. I almost said week 1 because I do feel like week 0 is week 1 at this point. I feel like it's going to be a major test to see how this offense will look when they haven't really known who their signal caller is going to be this whole time, because it's just been a constant back and forth. But Villanova's a program with very high expectations. They made the semifinals of the FCS playoffs last year. I'm not going to put that expectation on them, but I think they want to come into their new conference, win the conference right away, even making the quarterfinals of the FCS playoffs to look really good. We get to the final team on our list, the William & Mary Tribe, another newcomer this year. William & Mary is another program that is usually consistently a contender to make the playoffs, and they got some pretty good players back in the defense. They return a lot of experience overall, but then you have a guys like linebacker Harrison Johnson who are going to lead the way for this group. So I think you could see the defense really take a step forward, but at the same time, what is the offense going to look like a little bit? Tyler Hughes, their quarterback, is now gone. How do they replace him? And overall, just really a lot of new pieces. Is the offense going to be able to keep up? That's going to be one of the big questions for the Tribe this year. They do love to get creative on offense. I like that, but you got to have the pieces and continuity in order to do that. So we'll see what this team looks like. And also, while the defense is a lot back, can they improve stopping the run? That is going to be another big question for them, because last year, I think they gave up over 180 rushing yards per game. They need to get better at that. For the Tribe, I think for them, a successful season looks like making the FCS playoffs, at least as an at-large, and being in this race in their new conference would be huge for them. But now we get to the end here. Time for a sleeper pick, and then who will win the conference title. My sleeper is going to be, I'm looking at Lafayette as my sleeper. I think the Leopards could really take a step forward, prove to be a top 25 team this year. And I think with how much they have back on defense, I think that unit is going to improve this year and really just kind of help this team leap towards the top of the conference and make the playoffs. My championship pick is going to be Villanova. I think the Wildcats, even though there's been a lot of chaos lately, I think Villanova still wins this conference. I mean, Mark Fuente, again, like an excellent coach. They're going to be really, really good. So that is our Patriot League preview. It's a lot of fun getting to talk about these teams. Not enough people do talk about these teams, but we here at Updog Sports Talk, we do. We dive into everyone. So thank you for tuning in. Hopefully you learned something about each of these teams and looking forward to the season. Thanks for tuning in.